17 phones rose before Spencer put both hands on my waist. Tell me which part made me unfaithful. The chair, the song, or the fact that I wanted my husband to watch. On paper, I gave his friend one birthday dance and made no promise after it. People decided the act was cruel because they saw my husband's face, but nobody counted the years I had asked that same man to look at me. My husband watched the phones before he watched me, calm in the careful way he used when emotion required an answer. I took that calm as proof that one sharp performance was the only language left between us. By the final beat, I was certain the applause had finally taught my husband what I was worth. My name is Audrey Holt. I was 35, and I adjusted commercial insurance claims for a regional firm outside Columbus. My work taught me to separate damage from interpretation. A broken pipe was damage. A customer saying the room no longer felt safe was interpretation until photographs, dates, and repair bills supported it. On paper, feelings were never enough. That way of thinking followed me home. Elliot and I had been together 10 years and married 7. In the first 2 years, every Friday night ended with one song in our living room. It did not matter whether we had eaten dinner or whether the laundry was still in baskets. Elliot would set his phone down, choose one track, and hold out his hand. For 3 minutes, the careful man stopped planning the next hour. I loved him most during those songs. Then Elliot opened a home inspection business. Work came in early, late, and wet from somebody else's basement. He still filled my car with gas. He still checked the smoke alarms before winter and left tea beside my laptop during difficult claims. But the Friday songs became twice a month, then birthdays, then a memory I was expected to value, because he still remembered to renew our insurance. The part nobody counted was how often I asked him to come back into the room with me. I had spent my childhood being called dependable. My older sister was the bright one. At 16, I lost the front place in a dance recital to a girl who smiled better, and my mother told me that reliable girls lasted longer than magnetic ones. She meant to comfort me. I heard that people would keep me only when the exciting woman had gone home. Elliot knew that story. He also knew why applause still reached places in me that quiet love did not. 2 weeks before Spencer's birthday, I found Elliot in the den wrapping a square box in dark green paper. Inside was a frame holding 2 faded concert tickets from his first year of college. Elliot and Spencer had stood outside in freezing rain for that show. He had paid to restore the tickets because the ink was disappearing. He asked if I wanted my name on the tag. I told him my gift would be separate. His eyes moved to my phone on the arm of the sofa before they returned to me. Spencer's name was lit across the screen. The message had arrived at 11:18. Elliot asked, with that soft curiosity of his, whether Spencer had started messaging late every night or whether he had only begun noticing it. I told him people decided a timestamp meant more when they already wanted a reason to be suspicious. Spencer was his friend. That should have made the messages safer, not more dangerous. Elliot asked if something between us had changed. I said the marriage had grown quiet because he had made it quiet. If Spencer could still joke with me, that was not a claim. It was evidence that I had not become dull just because my husband preferred reports to conversation. Elliot looked past me toward the dark window, where his own face reflected beside mine. Then his eyes moved through the room, as if there were other people there to consider. I called that avoidance. The careful one always checked the room before he answered the woman standing in front of him. He said Spencer had spent years turning him into the smaller man whenever an audience was available. Then he reminded me of the one thing he had trusted me not to use. In college, people had called them Spencer and his quiet roommate. Spencer got the stories, the invitations, and the women. Elliot had told me once that marrying me was the first time he felt chosen before his friend entered the room. I touched the smooth green paper and told him he was turning an old insecurity into a modern marriage problem. On paper, that was true enough. Spencer's flirting had never arrived as one large event. It came in small claims that looked harmless alone. At a New Year's party 3 years earlier, he asked me to dance while Elliot was carrying coats to the spare room. Spencer kept me for 2 songs and told the circle that Elliot had never understood how much attention a woman like me required. People laughed. Elliot came back before the second song ended. His eyes went first to Spencer's hand, then to the people watching, and only then to me. At a lake weekend the next summer, Spencer praised my swimsuit loudly enough for Elliot's sister Lydia to hear. He said marriage had made Elliot lazy around valuable things. I answered that Spencer would not know what to do with a wife like me. The line became a group joke by dinner. Then came the messages. Spencer called me the wife Elliot did not deserve. He sent photographs from bars and said the empty seat beside him had standards. I answered because silence would have made the joke serious. That was my interpretation, anyway. Elliot named the New Year's dance during an argument in our driveway. He did not accuse me of sleeping with anyone. He asked why every joke about him became funnier when Spencer said it and safer when I repeated it. I told him his real problem was not Spencer. His problem was that another man could make me laugh without an appointment. His eyes moved toward the neighboring porch where an older couple had stopped unloading groceries. Only after they went inside did he look at me again. He asked for one clear thing. The next time Spencer treated our marriage like a contest in public, Elliot wanted me to correct him in the same room. A private assurance after public laughter no longer counted. I said he was asking me to manage his confidence for him. That exchange changed something. Elliot stopped attending casual nights when Spencer would be there unless the event mattered. I told people he was busy. People decided that sounded believable because Elliot was always busy. Brenna Shaw was the only person who heard the full version from me. She worked 2 desks away in claims review and had ended her own marriage after 11 years of being praised for stability. Brenna needed bold women around her because their choices made her divorce look brave instead of lonely. At lunch, she told me Elliot wanted the benefits of a desirable wife without the discomfort of other men seeing her. She said Spencer's attention was only dangerous if I secretly wanted it to become real. I did not want Spencer's apartment, his laundry, or his loud stories at breakfast. I wanted the way his face changed when I entered a room. On paper, those were different wants. Spencer gave me the idea for the birthday dance without asking for it directly. A week before the party, our group met at a brewery to settle food and music. Spencer told everyone he did not need another bottle or watch. He said Audrey could give him something he would remember and that Elliot could finally learn how birthdays worked. Elliot did not react at once. His gaze moved around the table, stopping on Brenna, Devon Price, and 2 old college friends before reaching me. He asked Spencer whether humiliating his host was part of the birthday plan. Spencer laughed and said Elliot had always mistaken confidence for humiliation. I told the table that no one could humiliate a secure man. Devon looked down at his menu. Brenna smiled into her glass, but her smile stayed there 1 second too long. The careful one had made the room uncomfortable again, so I changed the subject. The next morning I chose the song. It had a slow opening and a hard beat after 20 seconds. I listened to it in my car at 8:06, then again at 8:11. At 2:14 that afternoon, I messaged Brenna that Spencer would get a special birthday gift. I told her Elliot would either show some jealousy or prove that he did not care at all. Brenna answered with 3 fire symbols and promised to keep the secret. I did not write the word lap dance. The plan was still clean enough to rename if needed. Elliot asked that evening whether I had ordered Spencer anything. I told him I had signed the card on the green box. That was my first deliberate lie, though it used a true object. He looked at the tag. My name was not there. He did not challenge me. He only asked whether I wanted to add it before he sealed the ribbon. I said Spencer would know the gift came from both of us. 2 days later, Devon asked Elliot to set up a shared upload link for party photographs. Devon had rented the upper floor of a converted brick warehouse, and the mobile signal inside was poor. Elliot built the page, tested it, and sent every guest a private code. His inspection business used the same system for original property photographs, including their timestamps and source devices. That competence did not fit the weak husband I described to Brenna. I made it fit by calling it another task. Some men made parties. Elliot made folders for them. On the afternoon of the birthday, I stood in our bedroom with the song playing low from my phone. I did not rehearse every movement. I decided where I would pause, where I would touch Spencer's shoulders, and when I would look at Elliot. That last part mattered most. The dance was not for Spencer, not fully. It was a message to the careful one. One song, one chair, no kiss. That was the claim I planned to defend. The warehouse smelled of orange peel, warm brick, and beer from the tap wall downstairs. Devon had hung gold lights across the beams and placed a long gift table near the windows. Spencer's relatives arrived first. Then college friends, co-workers, neighbors, and people I had met only twice filled the room. Elliot wore the navy shirt I liked. He carried the green box under one arm while checking the food trays with Devon. When a speaker cable came loose, he fixed it. When Spencer's aunt needed a chair with a back, he found one. Useful. Careful. Almost invisible unless something stopped working. Spencer entered to shouting and raised glasses. He hugged Elliot hard enough to make people clap. Then he hugged me longer. He told me I looked expensive. I answered that birthdays deserved effort. Elliot heard. His eyes moved toward Devon's phone, then Lydia near the window, then Spencer's cousin recording the entrance. He looked at me last. I thought he cared more about appearances than desire. That interpretation made my next drink easy. Brenna found me near the bar. She asked whether I was still doing the surprise. I said the chair was already in the room. She laughed, but asked how far I meant to take it. I told her far enough to wake my husband up. At 9:32, Devon announced gifts. Elliot stood near the end of the table with the green box in both hands. Spencer opened a watch, a set of glasses, and a framed teen jersey. People began talking over each other. The attention in the room loosened. That was when I took the microphone. I asked Devon to move one straight-backed chair into the open space below the lights. He hesitated until Spencer pulled it out himself and sat down. The room changed before the music started. Faces turned. Conversations stopped. A few people laughed because laughter tells a crowd which interpretation is safest. I told them I had spent days thinking about a gift for a man who already owned everything he wanted. Then I announced that Spencer would receive one thing he would not forget. Brenna made a bright sound near the bar. Devon looked toward Elliot. The first notes began. I walked around the chair once, slowly. Spencer leaned back with his hands on his knees and a grin made for witnesses. I rested my hands on his shoulders. The cheering grew louder. Someone whistled. 4 phones appeared, then more. At the hard beat, I moved in front of him and looked across the room. Elliot was not watching my face. His eyes traveled from Devon to Lydia, across the row of college friends, then toward every raised screen. 17 phones. I counted because numbers stay clean when a room does not. Only then did he look at me. I smiled at him. Then I lowered myself onto Spencer's lap. It lasted several beats. Long enough for the room to understand. Long enough for Spencer's hands to leave his knees and settle at my waist. I did not remove them. That would have made the gesture look serious, and I needed it to remain a performance. Spencer laughed toward the cameras. I leaned back just enough to let the crowd see my face. The cheering covered the music for a moment. Elliot stood beside the gift table with the green box against his chest. His face did not redden. He did not cross the room. His gaze moved through the witnesses once more. Then he set the box down between the opened watch and the empty glasses case. The ribbon stayed perfect. He took his keys from the table and walked out. I watched the door close. Then I turned back to Spencer because following Elliot would have given his silence control of the room. When the song ended, I kissed Spencer's cheek and told the guests that memorable gifts did not need wrapping. Spencer announced that mine was the best gift of the night. The applause came again. On paper, the dance ended there. I did not go after my husband. Brenna asked whether I should check on him, but her voice was smaller now. I told her Elliot used silence as a punishment and would return when nobody rewarded it. Spencer agreed. He said Elliot had always needed time to process being outmatched. That line made two college friends stop smiling. I saw it and decided loyalty had made them stiff. The party continued for another 90 minutes. Devon's upload page filled quickly. 11 videos became 17, then 23, as people added shorter clips and photographs. We watched one angle from beside the bath 3 times. Elliot's face appeared behind me, still and pale under the gold lights. I laughed because his expression looked too serious for one song. People decided that laugh was worse than the dance. At the time, it kept the room from making me apologize. Brenna did not laugh on the third replay. She studied the moment before I sat down, when I turned and smiled at Elliot. She asked whether I had known exactly where he was standing. I told her the whole purpose was to make him watch. That did not make it betrayal. It made it communication with music. At 12:47, Spencer sent a message while he was standing 10 feet away. He called it the best gift of his life and said it was a shame Elliot had never learned how to share. I looked at him across the room. He raised his glass. I answered with a laughing symbol. The wording had crossed a line. The symbol let me pretend I had not followed it. When I reached home at 1:38, Elliot's work charger was gone. So were 2 shirts and the small bag he used for overnight inspections. Nothing was broken. The living room speaker sat where it always sat. Our Friday playlist was still on the screen. He had sent one message saying he would stay with Colin and speak to me when he could do it without an audience. I called that dramatic. Then I sent Brenna a photograph of his empty side of the closet and told her the careful one had packed for one song. She did not answer until morning. Elliot called at 9:05. He asked only whether I had looked at him before I sat on Spencer. I told him yes. I said I had wanted one honest reaction after years of asking politely and receiving calendar promises. He asked whether his pain had been part of the gift. I told him that was an interpretation. The facts were simple. I had stayed dressed. I had not kissed Spencer on the mouth. I had gone home alone. Elliot went quiet. I heard traffic behind him and Colin closing a door. He said we would speak later. His voice held no threat. That made me certain he had no real answer. By noon, the group chat had divided itself. A few people sent laughing symbols. Lydia left the chat. Devon asked everyone not to post public clips without permission. Spencer wrote that adults could survive a birthday joke. I answered that secure marriages survived far more than one chair. Then I opened the side-angle video again and watched myself smile at my husband before the beat fell. The frame was sharp. My intention looked bright enough to touch. I closed it and chose the interpretation that protected me. I had been trying to wake him up, not break him down. 3 days passed before Lydia called me. Elliot's older sister was not loud. She worked as a physical therapist and spoke to angry people without giving their anger somewhere to push. She asked whether Spencer had contacted me after the party. I said his messages were not relevant because nothing physical had happened after the dance. Lydia moved through the old incidents one by one. The New Year's dance. The lake comment. The late message calling me a wife Elliot did not deserve. The dinner when Spencer said he would take me if Elliot ever became careless. Each event had happened in front of someone. Each time, Elliot had asked me to draw the boundary where the joke had been made. Each time, I had taken him somewhere private and called him insecure. I told Lydia she was building a pattern out of interpretations. She said Elliot had tolerated Spencer because he trusted his wife more than he distrusted his friend. Then she said I had used that trust to make him the only person in the room who was not allowed to object. The line stayed between us. My eyes moved to the full message history with Spencer on my tablet. There were no declarations of love. There were no plans for hotel rooms or secret weekends. There were years of smaller permissions. Spencer had once said I should have married him. I had answered that he could not handle me. He had called Elliot lucky and slow. I had told him luck expired when men stopped paying attention. At 11:54 one night, he had asked whether I ever imagined choosing differently. I had sent a photograph of my wine glass and said imagination was still free. On paper, every line could be defended. Together, they described a room Elliot had been standing outside for years. For several minutes, another explanation came close. I did not want Spencer to share my mortgage or know which medicine I took for headaches. I wanted him to want what belonged to Elliot. The wanting made me feel selected. Elliot's discomfort made that selection visible. Then I returned to the facts. Wanting attention was not adultery. A marriage could not end because a woman enjoyed being desired. I told Lydia that her brother had stopped choosing me long before the party. She did not argue. She only said that being neglected explained my anger and did not explain why I needed witnesses for his pain. After the call, Lydia stopped answering anything that was not practical. Elliot came home the next evening for more clothes. He stood in the living room, not the bedroom, and looked first at the door camera, then at the windows facing the street. Only after the space was clear did he look at me. I had prepared a partial apology. I told him the dance had gone farther than I planned once Spencer put his hands on me. I admitted the image looked bad. I offered to stop making jokes about Spencer for a while. Elliot asked whether the dance had been planned before I started drinking. I said the idea had existed, but the final choice happened in the room. That distinction mattered in claims work. Intention and action were separate lines. He asked who had known. I named Brenner. His eyes moved toward my phone on the coffee table. He did not ask to see it. He said the dance was not the beginning. It was the first time I made the private pattern impossible for everyone else to ignore. I told him no one had ignored anything. They had applauded. That answer took something out of his face. He sat on the edge of the armchair where we used to leave our phones during the Friday song. He said he knew he had become difficult to reach. His business had taken the hours he once gave freely. He had answered loneliness with errands because errands were the only kind of care he trusted himself to finish. Then he said he did not know how to perform love for a room without feeling that the room had replaced the marriage. It was the saddest thing he had said to me in years. I heard another delay. Another careful explanation delivered after the damage he claimed to hate. I told him admitting neglect did not erase it. If he had danced with me at home, I would not have needed to prove I could still make a room watch. He nodded. No defense. His gaze moved around the living room once, touching the speaker, the dark television, and the empty hall. Then he carried his clothes to the car. Brenner called 10 minutes later. She asked whether Elliot had mentioned her. I asked what she had told him. She said he had contacted her with one question. He wanted to know whether I had planned the gift before the first drink. When I asked how she answered, Brenner said she had a meeting and ended the call. Her messages became slower after that. A reply that once took seconds arrived the next morning. At lunch, she sat with 2 people from property claims and said the table was full. People decided distance was neutrality when they were afraid of choosing a side. Spencer did not become quieter. He said Elliot had moved out because the marriage had already been weak. He asked if I wanted him to come over. I told him that would give Elliot the wrong interpretation. Spencer replied that Elliot's interpretation no longer deserved so much power. That line was too serious, so I sent another laughing symbol. The social circle thinned in ordinary ways. Devon stopped reacting to my messages. 2 college friends cancelled a planned dinner. Colin answered once to say Elliot was safe and did not answer again. Nobody attacked me, which made their silence easier to call cowardice. I watched the side-angle clip one last time before bed. Elliot's green gift sat under his arm. I turned toward him. His eyes moved across the raised phones. For half a second, the whole scene opened in a different shape. He was not failing to react. He was seeing every person who would remember what I had chosen. I shut the tablet and placed it face down. That was interpretation. The facts still belonged to me. By Friday, strangers from outside the party had started seeing short clips. Someone had saved the bar angle and sent it beyond Devon's private page. The first public caption called it a savage birthday gift. The next asked whether Elliot had approved. I could have stayed quiet. Instead, I decided to settle the claim myself. At 7:20 that evening, I edited a 26-second version. It began after I looked at Elliot and ended before he placed the green box on the table. Spencer's hands were visible for less than 2 seconds. I wrote that a playful dance between old friends was not an affair, and that insecure people turned confident women into villains when they could not control the room. Then I posted it publicly. Within 12 minutes, the post had 43 reactions. 2 co-workers called it fearless. A woman from property claims wrote that marriage should not erase a personality, and I pinned her reply near the top. Devon asked me to replace the edit with the full clip. I told him short videos needed focus. At 7:36, my director asked me to remove the firm's name from my profile because a client had tagged our office below the post. I removed the employer, not the video. People decided that caution meant guilt. I decided it meant the clip was reaching exactly far enough. The view count kept climbing. I watched strangers defend a marriage they had never seen and decided their certainty balanced the friends who had gone quiet. By 8, the public version felt larger than the room where the dance happened. That was what I wanted. A larger audience made my interpretation harder to remove. The choice was deliberate. My name sat above it. My co-workers could see it. So could Elliot's clients, Lydia's friends, and every person who had watched the party from a different angle. On paper, I was correcting a false story. Elliot arrived at the house 40 minutes later. He did not come inside until I opened the door. His eyes moved toward the camera above the porch, then toward a neighbor walking a dog. The careful one waited until the path was empty before speaking. He asked me to remove the edited clip. Then he gave me one final choice. I could post the full version, admit that the dance was planned to make him jealous, send him the complete Spencer conversation, and end contact with Spencer. He did not promise that our marriage would survive. He said only that truth would be the first condition of any honest conversation. I told him he was asking for a public confession to something that had not happened. He said the thing that happened was already public. That was when I gave him the accusation he could not answer. I told him I had spent 3 years asking for touch, time, and one undivided evening, and he had treated every request like a task he could schedule after the next inspection. I said I had been lonely inside a well-maintained house. Elliot lowered his eyes. He admitted that part was true. He had confused providing with presence and expected steady love to speak louder than it did. For a moment, his honesty left no argument between us. Then I used it as permission. I told him Spencer had not created the empty space. Spencer had only stepped where Elliot refused to stand. I said deleting the post would let everyone believe my husband's interpretation mattered more than my own facts. Elliot looked through the open doorway at the silent living room. His gaze passed over the speaker where our Friday playlist still waited. Then he looked at me. He said he would make sure the full story remained available and handle the rest properly. No threat, no raised voice. He left before I could turn the word properly into another debate. At 10:16, Spencer arrived carrying a bottle of bourbon and a small overnight bag. I did not open the door. I spoke through the camera because the recording protected me. Spencer said Elliot had made his decision and there was no reason for us to keep pretending nothing existed. He said he could stay, and we could finally speak without lowering our voices for his friend's comfort. The overnight bag changed the claim. Spencer had not come to comfort a married friend. He had come to collect an answer he believed I had promised. I told him there was no us. I said the dance had been one performance, and his messages had remained jokes because I allowed them to remain jokes. Spencer asked whether I truly believed years of encouraging him became harmless whenever I needed a defense. I told him to leave. He stood beneath the porch light for 9 seconds. Then he looked directly into the camera and said Elliot had been right about one thing. I wanted 2 men to compete and expected both to thank me for the chance. Spencer walked back to his car with the bottle and bag. I saved the full door recording. Then I exported the complete message history and sent both files to Elliot. I told him they proved I had rejected Spencer when a real line appeared. I expected the evidence to force him back toward reason. His answer came at 11:03. He thanked me for sending the originals and asked me to leave the post exactly as it was. I read that as acceptance. The careful one finally had the clean evidence he always needed. He would see that I had chosen my husband at the door. I sent Brenna the camera clip and asked her to tell me I had handled it well. She did not respond. The next morning, Elliot asked me to meet him at Bellwether Cafe at noon. Our college group used its upstairs room for birthdays and holiday lunches. I assumed he had chosen familiar ground because he wanted a controlled reconciliation. I wore the cream blouse he once said made my eyes look darker. I arrived 6 minutes early and prepared the terms I would accept. Elliot would admit that leaving the party had turned a bad joke into a public crisis. I would admit Spencer had misunderstood me. We would remove the clips together, tell people the marriage was private, and begin again without anyone calling me unfaithful. By the time I reached the upstairs door, I had already decided which apology I would accept from my husband. The room was not set for 2 people. Elliot sat at the far end of the long table. Lydia was beside him. Colin stood near the window. Devon, 3 college friends, Spencer's cousin, and 2 guests who had recorded the dance occupied the other chairs. Spencer stood near the wall with his coat still on. Brenna was not there. The dark green gift box rested unopened on a side table. The ribbon was still perfect. I stopped with one hand on the door. Elliot looked first at Devon, then at Lydia, then across every person holding a phone. His eyes completed the room before they reached me. Then he stood and smiled. Not warmly, not proudly. The expression belonged to a man who no longer needed his wife to agree with the facts. Elliot explained that Devon's link held 17 original recordings with full beginnings and timestamps. Beside them were my 2:14 message to Brenna, the side angle showing my smile at Elliot, the complete Spencer history that I had sent him myself, the door recording, and my shortened public clip. Brenna had confirmed that the plan existed before the first drink. Nothing on the table was new. Only my audience was. Elliot had sent the folder only to people who reacted to my public post. He asked what they believed after seeing the originals and supplied no conclusion. The room had already chosen. I set my phone on the table. My hand remained over it as if I could stop another file from opening. I said the full videos still showed no sex and no promise. On paper, the marriage had not been physically betrayed. Devon did not argue about marriage. He said he had laughed because he believed Elliot knew about the surprise and had agreed to it. When Elliot left, Devon understood the consent he had assumed was never there. That was why the joke no longer landed for him. I tried to say Elliot was using other people's discomfort to control my story. Lydia looked at the green box, not at me. Colin moved away from the window. Nobody accepted the interpretation. Spencer stepped forward and said the marriage ending meant we could stop pretending. Then he reached for my hand in front of the people who had watched me choose his lap. I pulled my hand back. Spencer said I had made him believe he was more than a prop. I answered that Elliot's friend should have protected the marriage too. He took his coat and left. Elliot watched him leave. His calm had won the room, but it had also starved our home. He could wait until every fact stood straight, yet he could not reach for me while a feeling was still messy. The same flaw now removed me cleanly. He said his divorce petition had been filed and temporary property arrangements would come through council. Elliot stayed in the townhouse, and I moved into a furnished apartment on a month-to-month lease. Our joint account was limited to documented household costs until the temporary arrangement was approved. Lydia answered practical messages only. Colin stopped replying, and the college group removed me from its regular dinners. Spencer blocked me that afternoon and told mutual friends I had used his attention as a weapon, leaving out how eagerly he had offered it. My director kept me employed but removed me from client settlement meetings after my public edit raised questions about how I presented evidence. I had wanted one room to prove I was still magnetic. Spencer's desire did that for the length of a song. Elliot's silence had made me angry because it offered no applause, no chase, and no public proof that I could still move him. So I found a louder test and called the result harmless when it gave me the answer I wanted. Months later, every full copy of the dance still shows the dark green gift sitting untouched beneath the gold lights. In every full video, the unopened green box stays behind my shoulder after my husband is gone.